Good morning. Hey, I put out a video a couple of weeks ago, and this is a follow-up video to that to discuss CWD, to discuss the policies around it. There is a lot of conversation going on. We're at the end of Missouri's deer season right now, coming up on the end of it, of course, last month, something like that. And the policies for CWD management in the state of Missouri are getting ready to kick in regarding culling and those kinds of things, after the season ends. And so it's right now, it's on a lot of people's mind. It's a topic of conversation as well as it should be across the board. And I'm seeing a bunch of social media groups form, lots of opinions being shared. And this is an attempt to try to, bundle together what I see is both sides of the argument and get to a place where we can make some progress, because I don't think it's very beneficial to anybody if this is going to kill everything and this is a bunch of BS and they just say that over and over. Let's get into the details. Let's get into the data. We need more clear answers. We need more clear policy expectations and numbers and feedback, so we can evaluate this. And if it is what it's said to be, then that'll prove out in the information, and that needs to be shared with us and talked about on our end as well. So a couple of things that I think are important anytime you're looking into any piece of information is just being opened up to new information and the things that you don't know, blind spots that you may have, biases that you may carry. And so if you can look, and what I've been doing over the last several weeks is just trying to really dig into the information, trying to say, okay, am I missing something here? Because I don't want to be 15 years down the road and find out that I pushed or promoted something that it ended up being detrimental to the deer herd or to my way of life, or the ability for my family to be fed or whatever. It's important for all of us, and so let's make sure we're right. So I kind of look back, and I tend to try to do that, go back into information and podcasts and interviews and studies that are posted. And you can get, people say all the time, well, you're not a scientist, you're not a biologist, whatever. I can read. Information is there. You can have logical discussions and draw conclusions and create questions regarding information that's posed to you. And not being the expert is why we have to rely on those who say that they are. And when those who say that they are and who are experts in these fields give incomplete, regurgitated answers over and over that sound the exact same without addressing your concerns, it's not going to help. You're not helping. So the onus is really on the experts. And this reminds me a lot of 2020 and COVID. I mean, it really does. Those of us, myself included, sat back in the beginning. We were concerned. What is this? What's going on? We hunkered down. We didn't know. We watched the news. We listened to the experts, and it wasn't very long. Not my own information, but the information they were giving me it didn't add up. What are you talking about? 100% safe and effective. Not like you won't get it if you take this one treatment that's brand new, but that treatment's no side effects. None? Completely safe. Like you can't know that. It's brand new. And yes, that's what they said. And now, of course, we know that it was all a bunch of BS. And that's why you lose a lot of credibility. So if you're on the side of science and you're on the side of the medical professional system, you're in the Missouri Department of Conservation, and you're promoting these kind of things, when we ask questions, it's on you. You got to do a better job at responding, addressing the issues that are being brought up, and giving us data that we need so we can understand this. Just regurgitating the same thing over and over doesn't cut it. It's not going to cut it. The distrust between the population and government agencies is at an all-time high. And no wonder why. The information that we have access to now is just revealing over and over that we're being lied to, that we're being manipulated, that there's a narrative that they try to push over and over and over. And you can go across the board in whatever field you want to talk about. It's happening. Politics, government, financial institutions, medical institutions, all over the place. It's ridiculous. And so, yeah, we don't trust you. I'm sorry. Does that make your job hard? Sorry about it. Then do better. Then get the data, bring it to us, help us understand, because you are the professional. So with that said, I want to concede a couple of things regarding CWD really quickly. I do think baiting will accentuate or accelerate the spread of any disease that's going on. So if you put out a bait pile in a little 2-foot square area, deer congregate from a lot of different places and feed there. They're going to spread the disease faster than they would if it's a food plot or an oak tree or just natural, So I'm not saying they don't obviously get together. They don't spread germs all the time anyway. They do, but I concede that it would accelerate it. So maybe that's a good idea. Testing for CWD is something that probably should happen. Let's find out where we are on the curve of prevalence. Are we at 1%? Are we at 20%? Are we headed to 50% like they say Northwest Arkansas is? So no problem. Let's do that. Should it be mandatory? Should talk about that. Maybe not. Is there other ways that we could get testing from deer, roadkill deer, hunters that want to voluntarily submit their deer? Dr. Grant Woods is just south of me down here, and I know every deer that they kill, he tests every one. And if it comes, they hold it till it comes back. If it tests positive, which he's had a couple that did, then they don't eat that deer or whatever. That's your choice, but he's going to submit because he wants to. He wants to find out what's going on with his deer herd. And so there's lots of ways to do it without it being mandatory. Those are some concessions. Now, I've watched a couple of different podcasts that I would like for you to watch. Maybe you have already, but the Meat Eater podcast number 766, Steve Ranella had Mark Reuter and Michael Chamberlain on that podcast. I watched the whole thing. It's 2.5 hours. At about the 1 hour, 10 minute mark right in there, it gets really interesting. And the whole thing is interesting and it's good. And those two guys are great guys. I'm sure they're really great guys. You can see it in them. They're trying to do their best. But the problem that I came out, because I watched that and I said, okay, let me get exposed to some information that I maybe don't know. And they talked about they were primarily involved in that Northwest Arkansas study, which is used. But some of the things that come out of this is they say that, one of the problems with CWD is it's undetectable to the naked eye. Like deer look healthy, they look normal, they could have it and you never know it. Okay, accept that, that's fine. 18 to 24 month, let's call it an incubation period, whatever. But at that point, it's 100% fatal. That's kind of what they initially come out and say, 100% fatal. And I hear that from Jason Isabella out of the MDC, Dr. Grant Woods, these two guys, Mark Reuter, Michael Chamberlain, 100% fatal, 100% fatal. Well, if you drill down, and thank goodness Steve actually drilled down, and it's not like this came out in the podcast and it got weird, but if you watch it and listen to what they say, Steve asked, he said, have you ever tested a deer that had positive for CWD, because they collared a lot of them and tracked them, and had that deer live longer than 24 months? That's a really good question, because that says, you just told me it's 18 to 24 months and then it's fatal. And then their answer was, we have to check the data. Come on, you guys got to know that kind of stuff. It should be, yes, we've seen deer that have lived a lot longer. We've seen deer or it should be like, no, once we detected it, the clock starts ticking and they're dead in 24 months. Should have at least an answer. They didn't have an answer. They really didn't. And so then Steve followed up and he said, well, how come you say it's 100% fatal then? And this was Mark Reuter's answer. And I'm not trying to be critical of that guy. I'm sure he's a really nice guy. He seems super smart. But his answer was, he said, well, it's 100% fatal because once they have CWD, if they can avoid all other forms of mortality, which is coyotes, deer hunters, car collisions, whatever, they will, I can't tell you when, but they will eventually die of CWD. Steve Ranella even said, well, what's the point? Like, they might as well die of old age. Like, what are we doing? That's a terrible answer, and you guys got to do better. So that's the kind of stuff that we're talking about. Additionally, when it comes to testing, I've been trying to find this out. Now, it does seem like the prions build up, and when they do the testing, I don't think they get a negative, but they get a not present. And I think that's a point where whether it's the lymph nodes or they do a rectal snippet, and they can test live deer through a rectal snippet because there's a little pocket of lymph nodes there, and those prions will collect there, and they'll say it's either CWD positive or not. But it definitely seems like it's an accumulated situation. So could a deer be carrying this deformed prion for years and it not be detectable? At what point or at what saturation level do the prions have to be before you can detect them? When you do a test, can you tell if that deer just got it yesterday or has had it for 2 years and it's building up. Like, positive means what? What does that mean? I need more answers about that. We should have more conversations about what that means, because now your 18 to 24 month scale that you say on no sign until it's fatal can slide, right? And then the other thing is culling. This prion, it lives in the soil. It's going to be passed on. There's no cure. Enzymes don't break it down. Help me understand how does that end well? How are you going to thin the deer herd enough to make it not spread any more than a 2% prevalency rate? If it's always out there and you thin the deer, I understand that now the deer aren't going to spread it as fast, but isn't it just going to accumulate until eventually every deer could be exposed with it? And what's the end goal? These guys, Mark Reuter said in that interview with the Meat Eater podcast, Steve Rinella, he said, once you get up into that 30-40% prevalence rate, you can't shoot your way out of it. So, okay, now you can't cull enough, and there's probably a point where you need to say, whoa, we need more deer, not less, so quit shooting them. And so, like, it's really odd that the solution is to kill more to thin it down, but it reaches a point where that's like, well, now it's too bad, and we got to get more deer and shoot less. Like, just help me understand that. That's just a legitimate question. Help me understand that. And how is that going to work? Now, Illinois, as I mentioned before, and this comes from Dr. James Kroll. A lot of you guys are going to know him. You can watch his podcast. It was about 8 months ago on deer hunting podcast that he was on. I forget the name of it. You can look it up. There's probably lots of places where you got tons of information on him. But he said that Illinois just came out, and I looked it up. They did in those prevalency counties that are less than 5%. They're removing the sniper shooting culling practice. I just read that. So if anybody has any different information or correction on that, correct me. That's fine. But this goes to show that these practices are not set in stone. And even Mark Reuter said that this stuff acts different depending on where it's at in different groups, different environments. They said they don't have any clear answers. They're unsure, so like the idea that here's what we got to do. We got to cull them. We got to thin them. All of this stuff that the MDC is doing, I don't see how it's going to work. So I need more information. And if you are going to do it, and maybe the MDC is putting this out and I haven't seen it, but more clear data about what you want the population level to be. So what are your harvest numbers? Where do you want them to be in Marys County? What do you want the harvest numbers to be? Bucks and does goal for your goal. If you could have it the way you think this management plan would work, so that you don't have to come out and shoot deer over bait piles, which again, is that like, don't do it during the season because that spreads, but we're going to do it so we can cull them, but we probably won't kill every deer that comes to the bait pile, but maybe we will. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. And so you don't have to do that anymore, because you say that's a massive tax on it, on your department, but yet you don't let the residents do it because we won't shoot enough. Really? I don't know. Like, it doesn't seem to make sense. Like, let the hunters do it. Tell us what the numbers are. What's the management goals? Let us all be aware. If I live in Stone County and you tell me that we need to harvest, 16,000 does and, X amount of bucks in Stone County in 2026, then let us go out there and see what we do as a hunting population out of that county. And if we meet those goals, great. No culling. Don't have to worry about it. Saved you guys a bunch of money, but I bet you won't. And here's what I want to say. I hope you do. And maybe you do. Maybe you do. Maybe you will. But here's the thing. This is not happening in a vacuum by itself either. So don't forget that. CWD is not just without a political horizon, not without a political environment that's going on. There's no question there's other things going on. What we saw during COVID woke a lot of people up. It was criminal what they did during COVID. Lies, forced situations, people lost their jobs, people lost their businesses, people's loved ones passed away. They couldn't have a funeral. It's absolutely asinine what they did, criminal. There's something that's captured. I love Dr. Brett Weinstein. He's He's a an evolutionary biologist. He's got the Dark Horse podcast. I listen to him a lot, but he talks about captured systems. And he said something has taken over a lot of these systems, these medical systems, the CDC, the WHO, all of that, where there's good people inside of them trying to do what they think is right. But top down is a nefarious entity that's taken over that has a goal, something other than to help us all, right? And it's very likely that that's going on in these other organizations. You're going to tell me that, there's corruption in our government, in state agencies, in the government, but the MDC is pure motives as the driven snow, like untainted. I don't know. Maybe they are and hope they are. But there's a lot of reason to think that they're not. And if you add that into the idea that now it's looking like they're using this to encroach on private property rights, where they can tell you what kind of fence you have to have up, or you have to treat or kill or terminate your animals because they said, or a neighbor said they saw something sick, and all of this, like, that is no good. And, we're not in a vacuum by itself, because there is a desire for digital ID. There's a desire for more tracking of us. There's a desire for more dependency on government programs. There's a desire to eliminate more and more people who are out here owning their own property, providing and being self-sufficient, providing for themselves, who say, I don't need you, get out of my business. Those people are a threat to what they want to do. No question about it. Our ability to defend ourselves, provide for ourselves, is a threat to them. What's a great way to get rid of guns? They can't hardly do it. And one of the reasons is because deer hunters. So think about it. If the deer hunting is not a thing anymore because nobody wants to hunt white-tailed deer because now it's all infected with CWD, and God forbid they ever either actually or they manufacture a positive in a human, it'll be over. I mean, they'll be able to run with that, and it'll almost be the end of it. So look, these are concerns, man. These are massive concerns. So the things I laid out here, I hope you comment on those. I hope you say, Jason, here's what I agree. Here's what you're thinking, right? Or here's what you're missing. I'm good with that. And I'll do a public. This is long. I wish this wasn't so long. I'm trying my best to keep them short. It's hard. But I have a ton of respect for Dr. Grant Woods, and he's a promoter of this. And I've watched his videos. I've watched his explanation, and he calls it conspiracy theory and, hoax and BS, and don't listen to that stuff. I'm one of those guys. I am. You're going to have to do better than saying it's 100% fatal. You're going to have to come out and show me what the data has and how do we know that. You're going to have to explain to me how we're testing and what level and saturation this prion rate is in deer. We're going to have to understand an exit strategy that if you can't cull enough to ever eliminate it, then what are we doing? What's the end game here with culling? Like, are we all just going to hope someday we're not begging for more and more deer to be around? And I'll tell you another thing. There's the gene therapy, this immunity thing that's going on in the state of Oklahoma. They're doing that. They brought that up on the Meat Eater podcast with these guys, and they poo-pooed that to death. They really did. Watch it for yourself. That's unproven. We don't know anything about that. That's risky. We shouldn't do that. What? Like immunity. Like God has created, and this is what I want to ask. Like, I'm a believer too, and I believe He gave us the right to pursue, to own property, to treat others with respect, and to take care of ourselves. And you can't steal or rob, and that's what the government constantly does. And He has created health systems inside of our bodies that adapt and overcome. And those are the greatest medical things that have ever been. And now you have a potential for there to be an immunity to this disease out of a specific genome or whatever, out of some white-tailed deer, and it's a bad idea? I don't know. Doesn't add up. We need better answers. We need more clear answers. So keep up the good work. Let's all get on the same page. Let's continue this conversation, organize what we can do in a strategic way to make a united front and get the answers we deserve and the policies that are right for this. I really appreciate you listening. Share, comment. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you guys soon.